here. I got a fan going. I think two fans are going. And it's hot and I'm miserable. And I don't want to be here. So I'm going to read anyway. The X removal plan. Bad. If you got to go to that plan, it's not a good thing. I think I showed a picture of the Spirit Flyer sitting on top of the semi-truck full of stolen bicycles. That was chapter 14. Chapter 15, the X removal plan. Oh yeah, I hope it's short. Not everyone in Centerville was cheering. While the townspeople were applauding the return of the stolen bicycles, Horace Grimsby was sucking bitterly on a sweet temptation, waiting for the phone call he knew would come. The red phone began glowing almost immediately. Grimsby picked it up. Good morning, sir. I was just about to. The cold voice on the other end of the phone screamed at him in fury. Grimsby winced. Yes, sir, but, Grimsby feebly protested. I realize that, sir, but I had no idea that. Grimsby shut up. He listened to the voice. He became more and more angry. But sir, you know the cloud they have put around that idiot boy, Grimsby protested. I say get rid of him. We lose in one sense, yet he can't do any more damage. If we allow him to continue, who knows? The dark voice screamed once more. Smoke began pouring from the earpiece of the telephone. Grimsby coughed. You've made your point, sir, Grimsby said, choking. I will proceed with the X removal plan, but I take no responsibility for it. If it fails, you'll have to speak to the boss about it. I think I can prevent him from seeing the grandfather, but if that happens, then what will? Grimsby was covered by the smoke pouring out of the glowing red telephone. His red eyes watered, then tears streamed down his face. I will proceed, sir, Grimsby said, but I still say, let's kill the... But the phone stopped glowing before Grimsby finished. He slammed it down on the hook and stared out the window. Down the street, the boy was still on top of the truck. The sheriff was returning the bicycles to the happy owners. I'll fix you all, Grimsby swore, then coughed. He climbed into the back of the truck. He pulled the blanket off a large black box that looked like a safe, only it didn't appear to have a door. I'll fix you good, he said. He didn't chuckle. John Kramer could hardly hear himself think. So many people were congratulating him. All the townspeople were crowded around the truck, calling to him, asking him questions. How did you do it? Someone asked. Did they put up a fight? Were you afraid? Did you use a gun? He deserves a reward. He's a regular hero. Where's the photographer? And on and on. John tried to answer the questions at first, but nobody seemed to want to listen. A photographer from the town newspaper took some pictures. John smiled, beginning to feel like a hero. But on the second picture, the Spirit Flyer rolled onto John's toe just as the photographer snapped the picture. Ouch! John said. He pushed the bike off his toe. John smiled once more for the camera, standing on the edge of the roof of the truck. But this time, just as the photographer pressed the button, the old red bike rolled forward again, knocking John's leg. Whoa! John screamed as he lost his balance and fell. Look out, the crowd yelled. Catch him! For the second time that day, John was falling. Luckily, he didn't fall far. A dozen arms caught him and stood him on his feet. He's kind of a clumsy hero, I'd say, a voice in the crowd said. Everyone laughed. John's face turned red. He felt ridiculous. He almost felt angry. He knew the Spirit Flyer had pushed him on purpose. Two men got the old red bike off the top of the truck. The old red bike off the top of the truck. Once on the ground, John sat on the seat. The photographer wanted to take more pictures. The crowd stood back. How's this for a headline, Jake? Someone yelled, Boy hero saves bicycles, then falls off truck. The crowd laughed. John turned red again. Then he suddenly noticed the black truck of Horace Grimsby parked down the street. The door opened and smoke poured out for a second. When the smoke stopped, Grimsby got out and looked at the crowd. Even though he was too far away to see clearly, John had an eerie feeling that Grimsby was looking right at him and the Spirit Flyer. All the happiness he felt about having brought back the stolen bicycles seemed to vanish. John suddenly felt uneasy and scared. Something was wrong, yet he wasn't sure what. "I need to talk to Uncle Bill," John said to the crowd of townspeople. "Just one more picture," the photographer said. John suddenly shivered. For some reason he felt cold, even though the sun was shining and it was June. John waited for the photographer, trying to smile. Down the street he saw Grimsby walking toward him. "Maybe I need to be dressed in real clothes," John thought to himself, looking down at his pajamas. "Maybe that's why I'm cold." Sheriff Kramer was also surrounded by a crowd. Each person was more impatient than the next to get his or her bicycle back. Everyone talked at once. John felt sorry for his uncle. "I never want to be sheriff," he thought to himself. "People always complain. They're never happy with one thing or another. Yet they want the sheriff to keep them safe all the time." John looked at all the talking faces. The same people who were calling him a hero would have made him destroy the Spirit Flyer yesterday. Grimsby walked closer to the crowd. As he got closer, John saw that Grimsby was staring right at him and the Spirit Flyer. The boy felt another cold wave of fear pass over him. Grimsby kept walking slowly. John stared back at the dark rain. His eyes looked awful, John thought. They looked so red, almost as if... John blinked twice and looked at Grimsby again. For a moment he thought Grimsby's eyes actually glowed red. "Smile, John," the photographer said, but John didn't hear. He stared at Grimsby's pale face. Then he saw it for sure. Grimsby's eyes glowed red, two small lights. "Hey, John, get ready and smile when I say cheese," the photographer said. Suddenly the Spirit Flyer began to move. John was startled at first, but held on. His feet were on the pedals as they went around, so it looked like he was pedaling. Only John knew he wasn't. "Where are you going?" the photographer shouted. The old red bike sped up, pulling away from the crowd. John glanced back at Grimsby. The man in the black derby stopped walking and looked at John. The Spirit Flyer kept moving on the ground. The noise of the crowd faded away as he turned the corner on Elm Street. John took his feet off the pedals, but the old red bike whizzed along by itself. The bike turned the corner onto John Street and headed for his home. John thought the Spirit Flyer would stop once it got to his house, but it only went faster and faster as if it were in a hurry. John began to feel cold again. "Maybe I should go home and change clothes," he said to himself. John turned around to look back. Horace Grimsby's black truck was only 50 feet behind him, going fast. John saw the two red lights glowing behind the windshield. The truck sped up. John felt colder. For some reason he wanted to jump off and run. The truck came closer and closer. The red eyes glowed at John. The truck was so close John could see Grimsby's face. Only it wasn't his face. It was the face of someone dead, a pale, shriveled mask of a face, with his teeth bared, snarling like a rabid dog. Suddenly the Spirit Flyer lifted up into the air. John was almost frozen with sweat. The speeding black truck shot underneath the boy and bicycle, just missing them. The brakes squealed in failure. The bike soared higher and faster into the air. Something evil was in Grimsby's truck. And Grimsby, he must have been wearing an old Halloween mask, John thought. In his mind he could still see the red glowing eyes, the bared teeth. John held on tighter as the red bicycle soared higher, leaving Centerville far behind. Inside the black truck, two hands carefully put on the plastic face of Horace Grimsby. The red eyes stopped glowing, but appeared bloodshot and watery. The mask melted so closely onto the head that no human could ever tell it wasn't his real face. Acting as Grimsby once more, he backed the truck until it was in front of the Kramer house. He drove it onto the driveway and parked, leaving the engine running. He hopped out. Then, using a small worm key with an X on one end and a snake's head on the other, he opened the big garage door. He drove the truck inside the garage and closed the door. Using the same key, he opened the glove compartment in the truck and took out a small black can. It looked like a can of spray paint. A white circle X was the only label. Grimsby reached back into the glove compartment. And brought out a long, sharp hook. The curved end of the hook looked like a snake's fang. Using the key, Grimsby let himself into the house. He took the spray can and hook with him. He went straight to the living room. Just in time, he said to himself as he looked out the window. The sheriff's car was coming down the street with Mrs. Kramer and the girls. Might as well take them all. His eyes began to glow red. He took off the lid of the spray can and pressed the button. A black mist shot out of the can, then dissolved in the air. He filled the room with the mist. Outside, the car door slammed. Mr. Kramer helped get the bicycles out of the trunk of the car. Susan was the first one to open the front door. Grimsby sat on the couch. With one hand, he pulled off the plastic face. The eyes glowed red, the teeth bared in a terrible sort of grin. Susan smelled something dead the second that she opened the door. She stepped inside. The smell was horrible. Her eyes blurred, and she felt sick, as if she were going to pass out. "Mother," she called out weakly as she fell to the carpet. She saw something that looked vaguely human sitting on the couch. She wanted to scream, but by then it was too weak. She was too weak. Her eyes closed. Mrs. Kramer was the next in the house. The dead smell was strong. She saw Susan on the floor, but before she could speak, she fell too. Lois and Catherine came in together. They passed out, falling on top of Mrs. Kramer. Sheriff Kramer walked quickly up the sidewalk. He ran in the open door and saw everyone lying on the carpet. He didn't have time to speak. His eyes burned, the dead smell suffocating him. He coughed once and fell beside his family. The creature that had been Grimsby closed the front door. Then he turned to the bodies and held up the fang-shaped hook in front of his face. Two beams of red light shot from his eyes to the hook. In a bright flash, the hook began glowing red, like the creature's eyes. He swung the hook down toward Sheriff Kramer's neck. But a few inches away from the sheriff's throat, the hook hit something invisible that made a metal clanking sound. The creature pulled back on the hook, and Sheriff Kramer's body began to slide across the floor. The sound of a heavy, rattling chain filled the room. The creature pulled the sheriff to the truck in the garage. Then he went back for the others. One by one, he dragged the bodies to the waiting black box in the back of his truck. Each time he hooked some invisible link around their necks. The X-removal plan was working like a dream. Okay, there you go. One person's on, and probably nobody's talking. All right. Too bad, so sad. All right, well, good night. I don't think, was there a picture? Nope. No picture on that one. All right, good night, people. When I was a kid, my aunt was from Missouri, St. Joe area. They'd come back about once a year to visit something, and they always called it misery. Told me about copperheads and water moccasins and ticks and stuff. But I didn't get to experience it until recently. Not any water moccasin or nothing, but seen my share of copperheads. Killed a few of them. All right, good night.